David Hooper here, Build a Big Podcast, the final day of podcast movement 2018, and the time now, 1:27 a.m. I've just ingested a pint of chemicals, also known as Halo Top. Man, I'm going to go home, and the first thing I'm going to do is eat like a ton of kale. It's going to act like a Brillo pad. It's going to clean me out, get me ready to get back to like normal podcasting, get my voice in check. Speaking of podcasting, I've gotten several tweets and emails and things. People are wondering how I'm doing these podcasts on the road, why my voice sounds different. And part of why my voice sounds different is because I've been talking a lot. Over the last 5 days, that's more or less all I've been doing is having conversations. It's affected my voice, but I'm also using a portable rig now. I'm going into a cheap SM58 knockoff called the ES58. You can find it on Amazon. I think it's like $30 or something. It's a good quality knockoff. I had my engineer take a look at it. It's good. So it's perfect for traveling. If it gets broken, who cares? $30, but it's pretty rock solid. It's a great copy of the SM58 by Shure, which is a great mic. Not really for podcasting so much, but certainly in live clubs. You see it everywhere. It's the top selling mic ever. It goes into an iRig Pre, which I think is $30, maybe $40. iRig Pre goes into an iPhone. So I'm actually recording this on the Spreaker app. It goes to Spreaker, then it goes into my normal feed. So that's why everything is sounding different, and I am back to normal on the next episode. Sorry about the coughing. Sorry about the stuttering, the stammering. No edits here on the live and unedited version of Build a Big Podcast. Man, it's all this... It's the Halo Top. It's what happens when you eat chemicals before a podcast. All right, final day. Lots of people left early, surprisingly, and this is my 5th day in Philadelphia. I think people are just getting exhausted. I asked a couple guys that were leaving early, and one guy was just like, yeah, money. I mean, hotel rooms at the host hotel, I think they're about $200, plus there's a 25% tax, like a hospitality tax, plus other taxes. Easily somebody could spend a couple grand here to spend, 4 or 5 days, however many days you're here, flight, tickets. So a lot of people left early. I think just the exhaustion of staying up so late, having these kind of conversations, doing the work, that's another part about it. No trade show today. That may have affected it. And that was kind of a disappointment for me because I really liked the trade show. It was some place for people to gather and have conversations. They turned it into kind of a networking area. Super cool, right? You can also have those conversations, but it's just not, it just didn't have the energy that the last couple of days had. One of the things, though, and I think this was one of the best things about this conference, my top highlight, there are 2 of them. One of them has been Dave Jackson getting into the Podcasters Hall of Fame, and I talked about that a couple of days ago. But today, Terry Gross spoke, and you know Terry Gross from Fresh Air, an incredible presentation by her. She is lovely and laid back and charismatic and funny and thoughtful. Everything that a great radio host or podcast host should be. She played some early tape from her first days in radio, 1973. She talked about interviewing. She gave 3 rules for great interviews, and I'm going to go into that a little bit deeper once I get back to Nashville, back on the real mic, back into a situation where I can, organize this a little bit better than I can on the road. I'm going to write something up about it and share this with you. Related to this, I have podcast interviewing school coming out here in just a couple of days. It's a free podcast. Search for Podcast Interviewing School. You will see it there. There is a placeholder. It starts August 1st. If you are interested in that, go to Apple Podcasts, go to Google Podcasts, search for Podcast Interviewing School, and you will hear about 30 days of my thoughts on how to do great interviews. I'm not like Terry Gross. Terry Gross is on the air 4 days a week with a new show and 1 day a week with maybe something from the archive, the catalog. something that she's done in the past, but it's relevant for what's happening right now. So she's done hundreds and hundreds of interviews. I believe she said 87, 89. So she's been doing this for 30 years. So quite an amazing story by Terry Gross, and a lot of interviews there. I have not done that many interviews, but I have done several hundred, and these are my best tips on how to be a great interviewer. So search for Podcast Interviewing School if you're interested in that. Jack Daniels had the final party tonight, and I wasn't going to go to that. I was kind of partied out. It's loud. You can't really talk. And as I've talked about, I want these conversations. I want to meet people. But I did go to the Jack Daniels party, and the reason that I did that, one of the guys that I work with on podcasting in Nashville, Clark Buckner, is, I'm going to call him the producer. His company puts together the Jack Daniels podcast, and I know some of the guys from the Jack Daniels marketing team. Dropped in to see them. Great people. And Jack Daniels, it's a classic Tennessee whiskey from Lynchburg, Tennessee. Check out that podcast if you're interested in a great storytelling podcast. I don't drink, but even I found it interesting just because of the history, like how this stuff is made. It's called Around the Barrel, and that is Jack Daniels Around the Barrel. That will get you there. Google Podcast, Apple Podcasts. After that, Hotel Bar and Lobby. I mean, I had great conversations with Mackenzie from Blueberry, Dave Jackson, Hall of Fame podcaster Dave Jackson was there, Daniel J. Lewis, Rob from Spreaker. A lot of people were there. Jen Briney from Congressional Dish was there. So many people that I really, this thing, as I mentioned already, even on this podcast, conversations is what I wanted to do. Come here, make connections, form relationships, strengthen the relationships that I had, and that's what I did, and that is why it is after 1:30, the final day of Podcast Movement. Really great event. They are coming next year to Orlando, Florida, and that is going to be August 13th through 16th. Don't have any more details other than that. Don't know any of the content. It's worth it for the people. Maybe it's one of the things you want to come in early for. Maybe it's one of the things you want to stay late for. I would recommend it. If you're going to take the plunge to get a flight, take the time to come down and stay a couple of days, might as well make it 3 or 4 or 5 days. I mean, come at the beginning, be the first person to get there, be the last person to leave, because these connections are there. Even now, I know a lot of guys that are staying until Saturday, they're staying until Sunday, and me, Friday, that's after 6 days. Sometimes guys are doing a full week, 8 days even. Great event. I'm going to be back into the studio with another episode within the next couple of days. I'm flying into Nashville late tomorrow night. So probably give me another 48 hours to get something to you. But I will have some information, including those 3 strategies for great interviews from Terry Gross. If you're not familiar with Terry and you want to know who I'm talking about, and I was surprised a ton of people weren't familiar with who she was. And they missed a legend. She is a legend. The beginning, I mentioned a great intro. I mean, she's been on Jeopardy as a question, the answer to the question, who is Terry Gross, or who is Fresh Air, which is the name of her show. It had a clip of her on The Simpsons, her voice on The Simpsons, where Lisa Simpson was playing NPR on her car radio. Jimmy Kimmel, I mean, just show after show. She's really an American radio icon, especially, I think, for female radio hosts. I can't think of another female radio host that is well known. There's certainly some well-known female radio hosts, Delilah, for example. But Delilah's playing music, and that's where you eat a pint of Halo Top and watch a Lifetime movie and cry yourself to sleep. And I already had the pint of Halo Top. I'm tired, so I don't need that Lifetime movie. Not crying, I'm happy. I'm ready to go back home to Nashville. And I will see you in the next 48 hours with another episode talking about Terry Gross, those things that I learned from her that I think that you're really going to like as far as having a great interview, and more thoughts on Podcast Movement, a final wrap-up. That is next on Build a Big Podcast, and that will be coming to you in the feed very shortly. I'll see you then.